Hey guys, we want to thank Cap City Tees for sponsoring today's episode. That's right, Cap City Tees, the #1 printing company in Sacramento. Well, at least in our hearts. Cap City Tees is an amazing company putting out amazing quality at, most importantly, amazing prices. They are in line with any major retailer out there. Now, if you're in need of getting a shirt screen printed or embroidered, whether that's your local soccer team or basketball team or volleyball team or all the way up to corporate clothing, Cap City Tees is the place to go. So if you're in need or if you're in want, reach out to Cap City Tees at capcitytees.com or capcitytees@gmail.com. That's capcitytees@gmail.com. Welcome to the Hard Money Show, where we talk about real estate, home loans, and media. It is a good day when we can get on the podcast and talk about something that I find extremely interesting. Now, keep in mind, I have kind of a weird background. I'm a media guy, now real estate and home loans and all sorts of stuff. But I've always been extremely interested in search engine optimization. And if you're not familiar with what that is, essentially when you're typing whatever you want to see in Google and you see and you search and whatever shows up towards the top, that's not like a paid advertisement. That's because they have a very good search engine optimization, or they have essentially they're easier to find, or people click on them a lot, so they go up towards the top of the searching bracket. Well, I'm not particularly interested in that. What I'm interested in is the population that happens when you put your search into the actual search bar. And so you may have noticed this before. I thought that, Wreck-It Ralph, Wreck-It Ralph 2, I think, did a really good job of showing this, where it will start to push things out there that people most popularly search. And so I've wanted to do this podcast for a while because I actually, every so often I'll see sort of a meme or something that somebody will put out on this search. And essentially what it is it's the top searches for when people talk about real estate agents. So I did kind of two of them. I did, why are realtors, and then why are real estate agents? That's what I put in there, and then it self-populates. Now, I decided to go with why are real estate agents because realtors seems to be a term that's more commonly used in the real estate industry and not in the general public. They think they're your real estate agent, right? Realtor is an identification of somebody who is registered with the National Association of Realtors, and for us, the California Association of Realtors. It's a moniker for that sort of registration and professionalism in the industry. So I went with real estate agent because I felt that was probably what made the most sense in this sort of instance. And I want to jump into it, guys. So now there's a couple that repeat on here. When I say repeat, I don't mean they're the same thing, but they mean the same thing. So I'm gonna try to group those together so we're not duplicating things. But the reason I feel like this is extremely important is because I feel a certain way about my industry. I feel like there's a way to make it better. I feel like that's part of what this podcast is. It's an opportunity to highlight people who are doing well in the industry and people who are doing it at a level that is professional and respected. And we've talked about this a little bit, but unfortunately, that isn't the case in this industry very much because the entry point to become a realtor is not very difficult. And that's not to say that people who become realtors and real estate agents don't deserve it, that they didn't work hard. But comparatively to, a lot of other things, I would kind of consider real estate a sort of a trade. And if you look at it as a trade, then it has a much shorter entry point, right? I've known people who have gotten their real estate licenses in 3 months. It took me 6 months, and that's because I was working full time and doing a bunch of stuff. I already kind of told this story, but it's not extremely difficult to get your license versus, let's say, you want to be a carpenter, you want to be a plumber, you're joining some charter union, and you have to do an apprenticeship, and that apprenticeship is 2 years, and that's after you've already been trained. That's after you've already, kind of had experience, and it's a much longer, drawn out process. And I kind of feel like there could be definitely some benefit of having that sort of structure inside of real estate. And that might be kind of the way we go. There's a lot of discussion about, what the real estate industry is going to look like in the future. But ultimately, right now, it doesn't take very long to get your real estate license, and it's not extremely difficult. And once you do it, you're an independent contractor. And you're going to have some oversight from your brokerage, but for the most part, how you conduct your business is going to land on you. I think it's very rare that if a client is not happy with your performance, that they reach out to the brokerage. They should, because that's why the brokerage is there. The business is ultimately the brokerage's, but that's for another story. But these are the top things that pop up when you put in why are real estate agents, and I want to kind of go into them. So why are real estate agents important? Now, ultimately, I'm really surprised that this is kind of at the top, but I think it feels a little more negative than maybe it is. Essentially, the way I feel about this question is that people are asking, why do you even need a real estate agent, right? Now, it could be the other way, and it could be, if we're optimistic, could be, why are they important? Because I know they're important, but I don't really know what they do. That's very likely as well. But let me just kind of give you the broad strokes of, if you're going to do a real estate transaction, and as always, I say, vet the people that you're going to be working with, make sure they're knowledgeable, and they understand how to do their job. Not all realtors are created equally, and that's not to say that you can't work with somebody brand new. Maybe your niece or nephew or cousin got their real estate license and you want to work with them. Just make sure that they're working with somebody who's competent, because, like I said, these deals will ultimately fall back on the brokerage and whoever's going to be auditing these files and helping them get it closed. And so long as that person is competent and helping that other person get better, they can get it done for you. And so where that kind of leaves us is, the real estate is somewhat hard to navigate if you have no experience in it. Even if you're a Google expert and things like that, it can be a bit difficult because it is a lot of legal jargon, right? It's really what it is. And I think it's so much legal jargon that even as if you're a lawyer, you don't have to take the education portion to become a realtor. You can just take the exam. And that should give you some sort of insight to essentially, the difficulties of becoming a realtor. That really is the only part that's kind of difficult, is that you're mostly just learning laws, right? And that's the big thing, is like, if you aren't personally going to spend, 60, 100, well, the licensing, I think, is 175 hours plus the studying, let's call it like 300 hours or 250 hours studying the laws behind real estate. It might be best to work with somebody who has, even if they are brand new, right? I mean, they're going to be more knowledgeable than you are. And this is the same thing in the loan industry, right? The entire, there's a few things that are not law based, but for the most part, it kind of all functions around those sort of concepts of law and how to not violate them, right? And so I would say ultimately that is kind of the starting point of why real estate agents or realtors are important. It's because they have that knowledge base to help you make the correct decisions and not have any legal issues or at least minimize any legal issues that could possibly happen when purchasing a home. There are people that try to sell their homes on their own, and not to say that a lot of them haven't been successful, but there's a lot of statistics that come out about how work by selling your own home, and a lot of people do it because they want to save money without having real estate fees and things like that. Ultimately, they end up making less money on that deal than they would have if they would have just worked with the realtor, right? So that's the starting point. Now, everything kind of after that really comes down to the individual. For instance, myself, I have a big background in sales. I have my marketing background, brand design. I have actual design experience. I have, filming experience, photography experience, drone experience. So, I mean, there's just a lot. And obviously, I'm a licensed loan officer, so I have that as well. And, um, you know, the work ethic and all of these things. So, I think if you find the right agent, you can say, well, this is why they're important. This is the value they bring. They understand how to do the actual job. They understand the supplementary components to being a real estate agent. And, it's going to make this process a lot less stressful for me. And that's ultimately what a good real estate agent is going to try to do. They try to make this experience as they take all the stress and difficulties and frustrations of the transaction and they put it on their shoulders. And so it's a little bit easier for the seller or purchaser. And yeah, that comes, at a price, but ultimately, there's a bit of peace of mind there. So it's a full question for sure. Why are real estate agents important? But, they are, most of them, professionals at what they're doing, and they're here to help make your life easier, to mitigate any liabilities that you would have with doing your own real estate. And so, it's food for thought on that one. Why are real estate agents so pushy? Well, I think this kind of comes back a little bit to the fact of there's a lot of real estate agents. Let's start there. A lot of them. I don't remember the exact number. Again, we're here in California. There's a lot of them out here. There's this kind of running joke that everybody's cousin is a real estate agent. And so the fact that there's just, and I had this conversation once with a newer realtor, and we were talking about, deals, and he said this, some point in the conversation, he said, well, there's enough deals for all of us to go around. And I brought up the numbers for how many houses were for sale in California and how many realtors there were. And I said, literally, there are not. Like, there were literally not. If every realtor had one deal, there still were not enough to help every single realtor. It's just, that's not the way that it works. And so there's not, and especially right now, right? We're in April of 2023. The market is very odd right now. There's not a lot of properties coming on the market. And so inventory is really low, and that can make it really difficult for people to get work. Now, we kind of look at part-time realtors and we kind of look at full-time realtors here. And I think part-time realtors don't necessarily have to be as pushy unless they are trying to transition to full-time, because they have money to fall back on. But full-time realtors, if this is your job, it's a sales job, right? And most people understand from that perspective that sales is pushy, right? Now, there's definitely a way to come at real estate without having that sort of tactic. I personally feel that that's the best way to come at it. I really don't feel like you should be pushy. I should feel like you should be informative. You should bring value to the conversation. And by doing that, hopefully that they value what you're bringing to the table, and that will keep them engaged, right? But the way that we kind of think about this, and this is why our brokerage is structured the way that it is, and I feel like a lot more brokerages are kind of going this way, is when you are a brand new realtor, you kind of want to go where it feels like there's a lot of help, right? Because really, when you do your exam, you only really learn the laws. You don't learn how to actually do the job. And so when typically the bigger place you go, the more expensive it is up front, right? Now you might earn more money on the back end and maybe that weighs it out, but up front that could be really difficult. Typically there's training fees, coaching fees, desk fees, marketing fees, all of these fees that can be built in. And those fees can, on top of all the time you just spent to study, the cost of education, the cost of taking the exam, the cost of paying to be licensed in the state that you're in. And then on top of that, now you're paying a monthly transaction typically. And that doesn't even count for what I've seen people pay out of pocket for other programs that are in the community that they want to be involved with. And so you start to lose money very quickly in this industry. And we feel anytime that anyone's in that position where they're losing money, or even if they're just kind of breaking even, but they're spending money, they have this pressure on them to perform. They have this pressure on them to get deals in the door. They have a pressure on them to have conversations with people about real estate who maybe aren't ready or are not ready to go that in depth in that process. And it comes off very pushy. It comes off very desperate. And unfortunately, that sort of experience on how to be a professional, and this is a good example of how the exam doesn't prepare you to become an actual good realtor, because that part of engaging with people in your community to try to do business with them is not even part of learning how to do real estate, right? Learning how to do contracts, learning how to get inspection ins and things like that. This is one of those supplementary things where you have to learn how to communicate effectively. You have to learn how to sell effectively. You have to learn how to do interpersonal communication. This is a different aspect of the career. And if you haven't learned this in the past and you're coming into it fresh, it can take a while to gain these sort of skill sets. So that's why sometimes realtors are really pushy. Now, they could be really successful, and that's also why they're pushy, right? Because they work at such high volumes, they do really well, and they're trying to get more people into their pipeline. But I find that that's not really the case with really high performers. They really understand the subtleties of working with people. So if somebody is really pushy, I would probably say that person is maybe less than prepared to actually help you do what they need to do, and they might not be doing what is best for you because it seems like they have something that they really need to get done on their end, right? They really need to bring some money in. And so that can sometimes be motivating for people, but I sometimes feel like maybe it might push the client to do something they don't want. So keep that in mind. Very interesting question. All right, another one. Why are real estate agents so rich? Now, I think this one kind of goes with why are real estate agents so expensive? But they're not quite exactly the same question, but I am going to bundle them together and I'm trying to answer both. So, why are real estate agents so rich? Now, they're not. As a whole in the industry, they're not rich. There's plenty. The average realtor does, the median realtor does 6 deals a year. 6, depending on the area that you're in. Here in California, if you do 5 to 6 deals a year, you're making maybe, 60, 70 grand. Now, not to say that isn't a lot of money for a lot of people, because I think the median earning in the United States is somewhere around 25 to 35,000. It's not very high. In California, it is much higher. I want to say it is somewhere around the 50s or 60s. It's been a while since I've looked at that. But They're not. Most real estate agents or realtors are not. Especially, let's take everybody who's a part-time realtor. Very unlikely that they're even doing more than one deal a year, one or two deals a year, right? So we kind of take them out. We take all of the full-time realtors who are making a normal living, right? Somewhere between 50 to 70 grand a year. They're doing the job, but they're not, I wouldn't say really excelling at the job. There's this kind of thing in the real estate industry where 5% of the industry does 95% of the work. Now, I know those numbers don't fully work out, but the idea behind them is pretty sound. Because really, in my experience, probably only 5% of the realtors that I've ever met are extremely competent in what they're doing, and most of them are brokers, right? That's why they get to that level that they're at. So when we look at the majority of real estate agents and realtors, they're not rich at all, right? But what you see are the people that are on Instagram, the people that are doing really well, and you can make a lot of money in real estate, especially the industry you're in. Now, let's use LA as an example, or even San Francisco. The cost of living is so much more substantial there that it kind of levels out a little bit, but you're doing $1 million transaction out there with, 2 to 3%, fee on there. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of money back. And even one of those is quite a bit of money. You watch Selling Sunset and they're selling these, $10 million homes and making these huge commissions. But keep in mind that a portion, like, all the money that a real estate agent gets because they're an independent contractor, it's the full grossed amount. So that means that's the total amount that they're earning, but that's not the net amount. That's not how much they actually get to keep. They still have brokerage fees, right? So they might have to give, of the money they get, might likely have to give 20% of that back to the brokerage. Then you have taxes, right? The more money you make, the higher you're taxed. So you have normal taxes. Then you have a self-employed tax that goes on top of that. And then you have any cost that went into actually doing that job. And then there's the time cost, right? And it's not like you're just closing a deal in one day. It takes a lot of time. Most times, the entire process, if you have a buyer, could be a couple months, 2-3 months. You have a seller, that's a little bit quicker. The more expensive a property, the smaller group of people that can afford it. So that could take a little bit longer as well. So all of these things kind of come in, and there's maybe, if we're saying rich, if we're saying like upper middle class or lower middle class and up, then there's a small percentage, I would say 5%, if not less, make a lot of money from real estate, who do it really well. And typically, eventually, they're not only making money from being a real estate agent. Being a realtor opens you up to a lot of possibilities. If you stay in it long enough, you learn enough, it opens you up to understanding finance and wealth building as a whole. And so a lot of people, they get into investing, they get into flipping, they get into wholesale. I mean, a lot of avenues that you can get into in this coaching, in this industry. And so they make some of their wealth off that, right? And they become rich. So I would say as a whole, real estate agents are not rich. It's just, a misconception. You see the top producers online and you think, yeah, they're rich. And then I think a lot of times realtors will portray that they're doing really well when they're not, because they want people to think that they should work with them because they're doing so well. And that's typically not the case. So that's the rich portion. Now, the so expensive portion. Again, I go back to how the money that they're making, they don't actually get to keep all of it, right? So that's kind of the first thing. The second thing really comes down to the skill set of which you're asking them to perform. The more difficult the task, typically, the higher the pay. Now, if you wanted to sell or buy a house, are you going to understand the 150 pages of contracts that come in? Are you going to understand whether you're violating a law or not violating a law? Are you going to be good at negotiating? Are you going to be good at follow through and getting everything done on time? Now, I brokered, or I shouldn't say brokered, I did my own real estate transaction when I purchased my home, right? So I have this kind of firsthand experience on like if I was going to do this myself. And I can 100% say that if I wasn't a real estate agent and I didn't have help from my broker, I wouldn't have been able to do it. I wouldn't have met my deadlines, right? Because you have to contractually meet your deadlines. If you don't, you either need to pull out of the deal or you're going to lose your earnest money deposit. And depending on how severe it gets, you could even be sued. So when you consider things like that, then yeah, the skill set that a realtor and a broker is providing is going to be expensive, right? It's just like, not just like, but it's very similar to hiring a lawyer. When you hire a lawyer, you're paying them for the education, knowledge, and other supplementary skill sets that they have to help you achieve whatever it is you're trying to achieve, right? Real estate agents are like a smaller version of that. So yeah, it's a little bit expensive. Plus, you have to look at the level of transaction that they're working on as well, right? You sell a hot dog for $2, you get 50 cents of that, right? Or whatever, that kind of breakdown. Let's just say that's the general idea, right? Well, you're selling a $500,000 home, right? I mean, that's a really expensive home. You're getting a portion of that. Now, there's a lot of conversation on whether that sort of structure should be revamped or re-looked at by the National Association of Realtors, California Association. There's a lot of lobbying going around the way that realtors get paid, because sometimes it really feels like, wow, I can't believe I just made this money doing this transaction, because the clients are amazing, the sellers were, everybody was amazing in the transaction. It went completely smooth. You had the best borrower. They had everything in line. They worked extremely quickly, and that's good. Like myself, when I did my house, I did a 15-day close on my house, because I understood everything I had to do and I was able to get it. And I'm sure on the other end, they're like, wow, that was great. Like, that was so easy. But on the other hand, it's not always easy, right? One client could end up taking up my entire day, and I have 10 to 20 clients. And so it can be really difficult to navigate sort of stuff and navigate things like that. And I think that's where it comes now. Could it be cheaper? Possibly. Could it be more expensive? Definitely. It just really depends on the situation, but that's kind of where it's at. And I'm not lobbying one way or the other. I'm just explaining my insights on why it costs so much to work, to have realtors. It's just the skill set that they're providing to you should have a lot of value, because, and I'm not going to go into this too much more, but as an example, there are penalties for violating certain laws that are $10,000, $100,000, $40,000 a year in prison. Think about that. Is that something you're really willing to violate? Knowingly or not knowingly, a violation is a violation. Willing to risk that sort of things. And keep in mind, right, you're as a, depending on how you have your business structured, they could, if you have, you're not a realtor, you don't have any business, you don't have any insurance, you don't have anything, you're completely liable, right? That means that the car you own, the assets you have, if you have another home, anything that you own is now up for grabs. So are you really willing to risk all of that? And I think most people would say no. I would prefer to hire somebody who's an expert in the industry and can do this without me having to worry. And so that's what you're paying for. All right, next one. Let's see here. The next one is, why are real estate agents paid so much? I missed that. Same thing though. Why are real estate agents so lazy? This one is extremely good question because I have a next level work ethic, and not to say that, um, arrogantly, but it's built out of necessity, right? And as you guys know, I did not have an easy upbringing. I did not have an easy life, pretty much, until I got my first real gig, my first real job, working for the Boy Scouts, because that was a salary job. Now I was working in an immense amount of hours, so um, that had its toll as well. But financially, to have a steady paycheck like that, that was the difference. And I wasn't making very much there, right? I was making 50, 40 something, 50 grand. It wasn't very much. But even at that amount, and then being able to do some supplementary things on the side, um, I was able to start making that impact. And that didn't really happen until I was 20. Oh, when did I start working there? 28, I guess, maybe something like that. So, from when I got my first job when I was 15, I got my first management job when I was 18, and I worked 2 to 3 jobs through undergrad. I worked 2 to 3 jobs through grad school. I worked 2 to 3 jobs um, after grad school until pretty much I got into, working for the Boy Scouts. So, a lot of work, and by pure necessity of survival, my work ethic is extremely high. My follow through is extremely high, and I set extremely high standards. And my wife has pointed this out to me, that it isn't extremely realistic for most people. As I get older, my worldview is expanding. I was very tunnel vision for a very long time. Me. How do I break in? How do I finally be able to survive? And so I see the world a lot differently, and I expect a lot more of people. And that probably has been very difficult for people that I have worked with. And now that I'm getting a bit older, I'm starting to understand that a bit more, and I'm trying to be a lot more understanding. But my I kind of function at the same level that, top 1%ers function at. And because of that, I mean, this podcast is a good example, right? I mean, I woke up at 5 a.m. to do it. And I don't make money off this. I haven't made any money. I do have a sponsor, and I got some gear from it, and I'm helping other people in the industry by partnering them together. But, I'm not sponsored. I don't have anything like that. This is really just something that I feel is needed in our industry. And so when I look at it that way, and I know this has kind of got off basis from the question, but I can only answer it from my perspective. And I'm trying to help you all understand why I think people are so lazy in our industry. And it's simply just because people are lazy. We look for, as a human society, we look for the easiest way to do things, and that's good. That's led to a lot of innovation. It doesn't always have to be the hardest way to get something done. Being lazy can be a good thing if it means that you're creating systems that are making life easier for yourself and you're still getting your work done. But I think in this instance, they just mean why don't real estate agents reply? Why don't they do their job? Why don't they spend more time learning? Why don't they, market? And I found that it's just most people that get into this industry don't know what they're getting into, and they don't have the work ethic, and they don't have the experience to do what is necessary to be successful in this industry. And that's just the truth. And that's probably the truth in a lot of industries. It's a lot of work not to be lazy. It is a lot of work to just do the job effectively, for one, because typically you're learning the job or whatever it is, but it's a lot of work just to do that, right? I mean, 40 hours a week, go do your job, be good at it, and be fine. It takes an immense amount of work to be great at something. And scouting is a good example of that for me, right? I mean, 100-hour weeks, 80 to 100-hour weeks. When I was there, when I first started, I think I went nearly 3 months without a day off. You know, it just takes such an immense amount of work. It's such a toll on your body, on your mind, your spirit, on your friends and your family. It's difficult to be great. And so I get it, right? I mean, people want to make money, they want to do it the easiest way they can. And that's typically why they're lazy, you know. Now you hope, and again, this is your responsibility to vet the people you're working with, get an understanding, right? I have macthemortgageman.com. I have my website up. I have all my information on there. That's a good, start. Do they have a website? Do they have social media presence? Sit down with them and see what's your experience. And it doesn't always have to be what's your real estate experience, what's your past experience, what's your education, all of that stuff is relevant in these sort of things. And are you going to be able to work with them? But I mean, when it comes to why a real estate agent's lazy, it just really has a lot to do with the fact that it's hard to be good at stuff. I think that's what it comes down to. And people don't really want to work hard. They want things they just want the things they want, and they want to get it with as little effort as possible. And I'm not going to say that that's wrong. I'm just going to say that's not how I function, and I would never teach anybody to work that way. So that is what it is. So let's see here. Lazy, expensive. Why are real estate agents so rude? I think that this is a difficult question to answer because people are rude in every industry, right? Now you can't really afford to be rude in real estate industry. You're a service person, you're a salesperson. That really is counterintuitive to what we do to be rude. But I think I've seen it two ways. One, is people are rude because they're incompetent. They don't understand what they're supposed to be doing. They get really frustrated, and they are compensating with rudeness because they're trying to shield the fact that they don't understand what they're doing. And that's kind of been the biggest instance. On the other end, I've seen people who are rude because they're so good at their job that they get frustrated with the person they're working with, or they feel so entitled to what they do, that they think that they're better than the people that they're working with. They think that they're granted something, because you see this a lot with like realtors who have been in the industry for 15, 20 years, and they're dealing with a realtor who's been in like maybe they're 3-4 years, and they're like, oh, well, I've been in the industry for 15 years and I know what I'm talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes, the older realtor is wrong. But I find it's sort of that arrogance of rudeness versus the other side where it's, you're kind of self-projecting your insecurities and being rude because of that. And then I guess there's kind of that other thing where maybe they're just rude and they don't know how to deal with people correctly, right? But yeah, it's a problem. And again, this comes back to the problem, the fact that there's so many realtors, that this is a part-time gig for a lot of them. And it doesn't necessarily like make or break if they treat you well. It doesn't make or break their lives. So that kind of leaves you in a really tough position to be in when working with people like that. But I hope that we can improve the etiquette that comes from individuals in our industry, because it makes everybody in the industry look bad, right? And that's really the main problem that I'm trying to combat, is we want to improve the image of realtors. So why this is the last one I'm going to do, because the other ones are why are real estate agents calling me, and that could be for a lot of reasons, probably because you listed your own home, or your house, it looks like it's ready to sell. And then why are real estate agents independent contractors? Again, I'm not going to really go into those, but the last one is why are real estate agents so stupid? This is funny to me because a lot of them are kind of stupid. I mean, I don't know how else to really say that. They just are. And it's not that they're like, it's not like they're, I mean, they had to pass an exam, right? So it's not like they're stupid, but, but maybe again, it's not extremely difficult to get this job. So it's possible that they're not good at everything else, right? Um, and oh man, I hate to be negative, right? But when you it kind of starts from the beginning, passing your education. Now I could have easily saw myself taking 2 times to pass the exam. It was really difficult in the way that it's phrased, right? That's what makes it difficult. Learning the context, not if it was straightforward, it wouldn't be a problem, but it's not. They try to trick you, and that's I've been told and I've read that it has to do with they want it to be more difficult. They want people to fail. People think it's because associations want to make more money off of people. I don't know, right? I didn't design the test, but if it was just straightforward, like this year, answer this. What is this law? Answer this. Like it would be easy. That it's only more difficult because of the way that it's worded. Now, it took me 1 time to pass my real estate. It took me 2 times to pass my loan one. And personally, I feel like the loan one is much more difficult because there's overlapping laws, or I should say not overlapping laws, but like advertising in the real estate industry and loan industry falls under 1, 2, 3, I want to say 4 or 5 federal laws. So that makes it really difficult to really understand, like, whatever advertising thing you're trying to figure out. So that one's a little more difficult, but you really should pass it in 1 to 2 times. I mean, at the very, very most, to say you're having a hard time in life, 3 times. There's people that are taking 5, 6, 7, 10 times to pass these exams. So that's all not already a good starting point. I would say 1 to 2 times is kind of where, and nobody will ever ask. Like nobody knows to ask a realtor like, oh, how many times did it take you to pass your exam or whatever. But I think that's a strong indicator up front with how well they're going to do in the industry. Right now, not always. There's going to be some outliers there, but it can be difficult. Now, on top of that, you have to learn how to do the job. And now this can be really difficult if you're not under the right team or the right broker, because the likelihood of you learning it on your own is very low, right? If you can time it right, and if your association does it, there's oftentimes trainings that you can attend on how to do a contract or whatever it may be, on how to actually do the job. But really, it comes down to learning on the job, as well as having a good team or person above you that's going to be able to help you do it. It's very unlikely you're just going to go in and do it yourself. So that's extreme. They might come off as stupid just because they don't know what they're doing. And they're going to act like they do because that's kind of the job, but they don't really know what they're doing. So that, you kind of have that first part where it takes them forever to even understand the legal aspect. Then it's like, okay, now they have to learn how to actually do the job, how to understand all of the disclosures that you're signing, how to work with the seller's agent or the buyer's agent, how to manage that timeline, how to work with the loan officer and make sure they're getting everything done, because the chain of like responsibility falls first on the realtor, because they're the one that is initiating the process by putting in a contract. And they're the ones that stipulate the timeline of which they are saying this brokerage, the real estate brokerage, is going to get it done. Now, there's a loan contingency time in there, but the loan company is not liable for that, really. It really all falls on the real estate brokerage. So it's always the realtor's responsibility to make sure things are getting done. Now, if the loan department or, your inspectors, whatever, not getting things done in the time that you feel is necessary, then you don't work with them anymore, right? But there's a lot of responsibility there, and you have to learn how to do all that, how to manage all of that. And a lot of times that can take 5, 10 transactions to learn how to do it really well. And that is not a lot of transactions. Like I said, it's not an extremely difficult job once you're in it, but our career, but ultimately you have to have that experience. You have that people working with you, and every scenario can be a little more difficult and a little more challenging, right? So that can make people seem stupid. Um, the next sort of thing is all the supplementary things. Like I said, how to effectively communicate via text, in person, small group, um, how to communicate over email. Um, and there's different ways to communicate with your client versus how to deal with the inspectors and all of this sort of stuff, right? And so that, how to sell, how to negotiate, how to time manage, how to have follow through, all of these sort of things. These are not these are not even things that are really taught or trained at real estate brokerages. And because of that, um, people can come off stupid. So we're 3 levels in, right? Um, Now you could learn all of those things and still just not be right for this industry. And because of that, you might come off stupid, right? You're not fully getting in it. It's not fully clicking. And then, there's the kind of the last thing is you might just be stupid. I mean, and that means you might not speak well. You might not come off as, you might know everything, but you just might not come off as a very intelligent person. And again, I don't use the word stupid as like you don't know anything. This is a very niche thing to know, right? And um, it's kind of like getting a PhD, becoming, a doctor or whatever. Yeah, you're really, really, really smart at this small thing out of all the things you could learn in the entire world. Great. That does not mean that you're smart at everything. Doesn't mean you're super intelligent. So you might just not be good at this industry or whatever. But yeah, those are often times why people come off as stupid in this industry. And it goes kind of back to the laziness too. A lot of times people are just too lazy to learn how to do this job, this career really, really well. And because of that, you're going to sound ignorant when you speak about what you're talking, especially if the client has a little bit of knowledge base, and you aren't saying stuff that doesn't make sense. It can definitely come off that way too. So keep all of that in mind. Sort of understand that, don't be mean to these people. Don't be mean. Maybe they're just learning, right? And maybe they're not stupid. Maybe they're just learning. But have a little bit of understanding, but also vet the people that you're going to be working with. So again, I find this so interesting, this little search panel, what comes in, because almost always exclusively, if you put anything in about realtors or real estate agents, comes out mostly negative. Mostly negative. And I think that that's the thing that if I can do anything with this podcast is bring a light onto people who are doing well in this industry and who are competent and who, you know, are not lazy, and show the value of what we are offering for you. And this isn't to say that like I just want your business and I want you to, know that I'm smart and I'm competent, I can do it. That's not it. There's a lot of there, as much as I don't want to go back to the thing I said about that other realtor say there's not enough business. Ultimately, there is a lot of business to go around. We don't have to be so cutthroat in this industry, and it can be really critical and really difficult to kind of navigate that aspect of it. But I want to highlight other people in the industry, and I want to learn from them, and I want them to learn from me, and I want all of you to learn as well, and have a perspective on what we're doing here, right? And to really highlight that there are people doing this job well, doing it ethically, and that they're going to bring great value to you and really turn what can be an extremely stressful situation into a pleasant and enjoyable one. So Extremely G. Type in some stuff into your search browser, see what comes up. But that's all we have today. We're gonna have some guests coming on again. I was coming off of sickness, so typically I try to have some guests lined up, but I don't. Well, I do right now, but we're trying to solidify some dates. So, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for the support. And as always, this is the Hard Money Show where we talk about real estate, home loans, and media. You all have a great day.